To help us understand the legal implications of this development, we're joined by Attorney Joel Butuyan, an ICC-listed lawyer and chairperson of the Center for International Law. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Morning, Gretchen.
Okay. All right, first question. Is there truth to the claim of the defense that the prosecution has not opposed the request for an interim release under certain conditions? Have you heard of that, and what would those conditions be?
We have so far heard from the defense. We've not heard from the prosecution. And we've not heard from the Victims' Counsel, which is the OPCV at this point. And if you read thoroughly the submission of the Defense Counsel, I think they made a spin on whatever their talks with the prosecution has been. Because if you read deeply, the proper statement should be that the prosecution will agree provided certain conditions are met.
But under so your interpretation of this is that there has been no formal agreement yet done.
Yes, there's been no formal agreement because there are conditionalities imposed by the prosecution. In fact, there's an Annex A and there's an Annex B to the submission, to the request of the defense, which have been made confidential in the meantime. And these contain the conditions of both the prosecution and defense.
All right. But what is your take on that request for temporary liberty? I mean, what are the chances of that being granted given the history of the ICC?
There have been interim release granted by the ICC, but these past cases involve crimes which are not as serious as the crimes faced by Mr. Duterte. These are crimes on obstruction of justice, accused who were interfering with witnesses and victims, no? Not like Mr. Duterte is accused of crime against humanity. So this is going to be a first. And in previous cases, the interim release were either granted while trial was ongoing or when appeal was ongoing. In this case, trial has not been commenced yet. So this is going to be unprecedented, if ever.
Okay. So you, as one of the lawyers for the victims, would you oppose this interim release request by the former president, given that they have argued humanitarian grounds? He is 80 years old already, and he will not escape, and he will participate in the proceedings. I mean, what would you argue against that?
Gretchen, we are going to vigorously oppose this request for interim relief because the security of the victims and the witnesses are at stake. And in fact, even the participation of victims in the ICC proceedings is at stake. Even after the arrest of Mr. Duterte, so many victims still refuse to participate in the ICC proceedings because they know that powerful allies of Mr. Duterte are still in government, and they know the capacity for violence of his supporters. And on the issue of supposed humanitarian grounds, probably predicated on his health condition. Gretchen, less than 3 months ago, Mr. Duterte was able to travel to Hong Kong. No, he was able to speak in a rally for more than an hour, allegedly. And then when he came back, he was examined by doctors before he was flown to The Hague, and there was no serious medical condition that was found. So I think on the available evidence that we have so far, there is nothing urgent, there's nothing medical that would warrant an interim release, especially because he has access to medical facilities and medical personnel, in the ICC detention facilities.
Talk to us about the timing of this request for an interim release. I remember at the start of the hearings, this was already being floated, the possibility of that being requested by the defense. Why do you think that has been requested now at this stage before the confirmation of charges has even begun? And usually, dun sa nabanggit niyong kaso, no, yung kanina na obstruction of justice, is that request usually made at the beginning? Or mostly in the middle or at the end kapag medyo matagal-tagal na yung mga hearings na yan? Help us understand the strategy of the defense here as you see it.
I think from the very beginning, they've been wanting Mr. Duterte to be released. No? So this is really part of the plan, no? To have him released as soon as possible, and that's actually also very apparent, no, from the statements of his family members and his supporters who are rallying every day in The Hague. No? So this is really part of the plan. This is just the formalization of everything that they've been saying in the media and in interviews. No, so this is really not surprising. Now, with respect to the timing, as I said, this is really so early in the game because if you're going to base it and compare it with previous cases, the applications for interim release were made while trial was ongoing and when evidence for conviction would appear weak. No? So that's going to be also a ground that is invoked by the defense that the evidence is weak. And in other cases, the applications were made while appeal was already ongoing. No, so this is actually very early for them to file.
They have said that there is a third country that is willing to host the former president. Would you have any idea on what that country is?
It's really made confidential in their request, although they said that there is a country that's already agreed to host Mr. Duterte. But if we base it on past cases, it was Belgium that agreed to host an accused who was given interim release. No, and I would suppose that it's going to be a country that's adjacent to the Netherlands, because Mr. Duterte has to attend the trial. So I think it should be accessible to where he's going to be based, if ever he's going to be granted interim release. So we're looking at the countries like which share common borders with the Netherlands, like France, Germany, and Belgium.
Okay. Hindi naman po pala ganun kalayuan, ano? Kasi nung pinag-uusapan po namin, baka sabi namin baka mas malapit na sa Pilipinas. Katulad po ng Japan, hindi po ganun yun na doon maghihiring kung nasaan siya. Kailangan po sa the Netherlands pa rin ang hearings.
The Netherlands yung hearing, Gretchen, well, there are exceptional circumstances when there's a request to hold the hearings outside of The Hague, but that's very exceptional. But in this case, it has already begun in The Hague, so I suppose it's going to be in The Hague. That's going to be the venue of the trial, and not Japan.
Okay. And speaking of conditions of the detainees, what would the main difference be of Belgium as one of the possibilities as opposed to the detention center in The Hague? I mean, kung titignan niyo po, no, kasi may mga lumabas na videos na maganda-ganda naman ang itsura doon. But why do you think they would want to move to a facility that is just within reach?
I think they want a house, no, where he can stay, and where he can be, with someone who's going to be with him, and of course, in terms of image. It's going to be better for them that he is out of detention, that he is in a house and not in jail. No, that's one of the objectives, I'm sure. No, it's going to be a symbolic victory of sorts for them if they obtain interim release. No, the fear of the victims is that if he's going to be released and he's going to have access to people the identity of the witnesses and the victims that's going to be disclosed to the defense would be at risk of being disseminated to his underlings or to his allies here in the Philippines. And that would really create a lot of fear, no, among the victims and the witnesses if that happens.
Okay, and given the history of the ICC, ano po yung possibilities pagdating po dun sa mga liberties na maaaring ibigay sa dating Pangulo? Maaari po ba na lagyan din po siya ng GPS, hayaan po siya maglibot-libot kung maaari po sa Belgium? I mean, is that also a possibility, and how far could he go?
Confidential yung undertakings ng defense sa kanilang request for interim release, Gretchen, no? But they disclose some of the undertakings that they're willing to make. Number one, they're willing to undertake that Mr. Duterte is not going to appear in public engagement and to hold public office and to talk to people outside of his family. And also, they undertake for Mr. Duterte to be deprived of any gadget which has internet access and even his mobile phone. No, so those are the conditions that they are part of the conditions that they're willing to agree to, no, to obtain interim release.
Okay,
In other cases, the accused would be prohibited from going outside of the territorial jurisdiction of the host country. He is supposed to surrender his passport, and he's supposed to fix his residence in a particular place or a particular housing structure, no, where he can be monitored.
But we do know that the former president has a very strong following, as we've seen in the many rallies abroad. Kung hindi po siya gagawa ng public engagement, hindi po siya magpo-participate, will he be allowed to roam? And what if the followers approach him? I mean, how would that turn out? Yung mga ganong posibilidad.
Yun talaga, it's going to be a violation of their own undertaking because he's not supposed to be talking to other people other than his family, no? So talagang very risky for him to be granted interim release, considering na ang dami-dami niyang followers who would want access to him and who would find ways and means to have access to him, no? So talagang risky talaga for the victims and the witnesses dahil para sa amin, para sa mga biktima, even if mag-impose ng conditions yung ICC, alam mo yung track record ng former president, he violates almost everything. No, he does not recognize the ICC, does not recognize the Constitution. Talagang ganun talaga yung nature niya, no? So talagang even if he's made to agree to certain conditions, those are going to be pieces of paper for him that he can just discard instead.
You mentioned the OPCV is now the official counsel of the victims, the representative for now. Have they started communicating with you, Attorney Gilbert Andres, and other lawyers of the victims? How has that communication been between you and the OPCV?
The OPCV is the temporary counsel for the victims at this point because the chamber is going to make an appointment probably by September on who is going to be the permanent victims counsel. So in the meantime, everyone, all the victims and all lawyers who are representing victims have to course their communications, their submissions, their views and observations through the OPCV. So we coordinate with the OPCV on the submission of our views and observations as legal representatives on the ground of the various victims groups.
And have you already submitted your arguments against this interim release to the OPCV?
We're still waiting for clarification on so many things, like if the conditions, no, if even just the contours of the conditions can be revealed, because those would matter importantly on our submissions, no? Because as as NGOs on the ground, as lawyers on the ground, talking to the victims, we know the factual circumstances that would really counter the arguments of Mr. Duterte in his prayer for interim release. So we want to know the conditions that were imposed by the prosecution and the conditions or the undertakings of the defense, because we want to counter them one by one.
You also mentioned a while ago about their manifestation not for the former president not to hold public office. We do know he won as mayor of Davao City. Yung po ba yung pinatutungkulan po nun? Or is it just, parang having a public gathering?
I think yung kanilang undertaking is they will refrain from any public engagement and office, no? So yung office na yan would only refer to him being a mayor, no? Dahil yun lang naman yung public position niya at this point.
So what does that mean? That he will not be actively serving as Davao City mayor?
Yes, he cannot, Gretchen, no? That's one of the conditions that they have undertaken to take if he is given interim release.
Because we do know that he needs to take his oath to be able to get into office and to be able to serve. But another thing that needs to be settled is whether he will be allowed by the DILG to serve as mayor from far away. So meron po ba kayo naririnig when it comes to that? Any talk about that?
Alam mo, Gretchen, it's going to be impossible for him to function as mayor, no? Because as a public official, you have to be on the ground. You have to be meeting your officials on the ground. You have to be signing so many documents, no, every day on the ground. It's really impossible, and you really cannot discharge your functions as a public official from outside of the Philippines. In fact nga, di ba kung nagbibiyahe yung mga public officials natin, they need to designate a temporary OIC, no? Who will discharge their functions. Hindi talaga po pwede si Mr. Duterte.
And as a final question, in his petition, the lawyer Nicholas Kaufman assured the ICC that the former president will not continue to commit crimes. He used that phrase exactly. Is this an unusual admission of guilt on their part? How do you interpret this?
I think the prosecution could advocate that kind of argument or that view, no? But probably it's just going to be a slip of the tongue for the defense, no? Because I think what they did was just to copy the conditions that are in the rules of the ICC.
Okay.
You have to state that he's not going to commit additional crimes.
Oo nga po. No? If you take a look at the provisions for the grant of an interim release, that is one of those. All right, thank you so much for giving us clarity on this request and the steps moving forward. Do we expect this to be settled before the confirmation of charges?
Yes, by the pace of the ICC judges, I think it's going to be resolved, even the jurisdictional issue, before September 23, Gretchen.
All right, we await that day. In the meantime, maraming salamat, Attorney Joel Butuyan, an ICC-listed lawyer and chairperson of the Center for International Law.
Thanks for having me, Gretchen.